Um, Hello, everybody, and welcome. Now that you've been hearing us just kind of banter back and forth. This is Colm O Reilly. Colm, you are from Ireland and the founder of the Mental Health Plan .com, as well as a website there. And we're going to be talking about developing healthy mindset and habits, especially during a time right now like quarantine, where there's a whole lot of chaos and variables that are impacting those elements pretty harshly. So I know you, Colin, and I would love for everyone else to know a little bit about you as well. So I guess we'll just start this with, tell us your story. Tell us all about Colin.
Okay, well, hey everybody, I'm Colm, and you can probably guess by my funny accent, I'm Irish. So you're getting the Leprechaun's Guide to Mindset and Mental Health here. So I'll give everybody a very brief story. I struggled with mental illness throughout most of my developmental years, most of my teenage years, and most of my 20s. I attempted suicide when I was 17. Luckily, that was unsuccessful, and didn't deal with it afterwards. And then it wasn't just like okay, he was a teenager, made a mistake. I very much struggled throughout my 20s with, trying to make everything in my external world okay. And if everything was going well, if I was making money, had a girlfriend, had friends, felt like I was doing good in the outside world, I felt like, oh, well, I was valuable inside. But if any of those things got rocked, it was obviously because I was, not a good person inside. And I didn't really deal with that pretty much until my early 30s, when it came to a head again. And I turned to a friend at the time and I was like, what's the point? I feel like giving up again. And went through suicide counseling again. So when I came out the other side of that, I realized that I needed to permanently fix this. I couldn't wait for the next depressive episode to come around again, living with anxiety that the next dip was going to happen. So I started really studying what does and doesn't work for mental health, and what does and doesn't work for people who are busy and want to improve their mental health. Because the thing is, everybody agrees it's important, but no one has ever bothered showing you what works and what doesn't work and how to integrate it into your life. Because we're all busy. We've all got very real stresses out, but we also need to take care of ourselves. And that's what I started doing. I started sharing that with people and having a very positive effect with people. So I'm sharing it more and more now as I go on. That's the super, super condensed version on people. And if you've just joined us and you're like, whoa, this is a bit heavy, I promise you it won't be that heavy all the way through. We'll talk quite a lot about the difference between mental illness and mental health, and quite a lot about positive psychology and positive things you can do. And I hope you never have to deal with clinical levels of anxiety or depression, but we'll talk about what works from that stage all the way up to just, I'm stressed and I'm overwhelmed all the time, getting you towards living a very fulfilled, peaceful, productive, optimistic life. Back to you, Jeff. I don't know, is that too much, too little?
I got to top that now. Man, thanks so much for sharing. And I'm with you there with the thoughts about, it's so supremely important that people have some tools to address mental health. And I look at it very similarly in the United States school system. I went through elementary school, high school, college, and nowhere in there was a mandatory class or a core curriculum class about balancing a checkbook or knowing how not to get up to your eyeballs in debt as an adult, and also just how to take care of your body. And mental health is right up in there as well, that I feel like a lot of us would benefit if there was some base structure. Hey, you're going to be an adult and taking care of yourself. Let's give you some good stuff about taking care of, what's going on inside and going on under the hood as well. And not so much about the Pythagorean theorem, because God knows I use that every day when I'm buying a used car.
Hey, we all know the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, but we're never told some important things. I have a graph here I could share that kind of explains how I work with people and where I work before we go into any specifics. Would that help?
Yeah, I would love
I
that. Let's see it.
I can share, can't I?
I think you can.
So to all our viewers, and this is what I call the mental health, mental illness continuum. You seen it, Jeff?
I have seen one that's similar, like CrossFit and fitness. Yeah, yeah, I've seen that one.
That is it. So, unfortunately, there's like a language issue around the words mental health because people generally say mental health when they mean mental illness, or they'll say mental health problems. So, what I designed this is to try and help explain this to people. If you like, if we're suffering from clinical levels of anxiety, depression, or addiction, that's when we're going to need a counselor, a psychologist, or maybe even some medication to get us out of that. And generally, what they do is they get you somewhere up to around this level, somewhere between overwhelm and stress, maybe towards the can side of things. Um, but once you get here, you've got to get all the way to good levels of health. To make an analogy to what's going on now, if your lungs are under attack from the coronavirus, you might need to be put on an ICU and a ventilator, and they'll get you all the way to out of hospital, and that means your lungs are okay for day to day. But if you want to improve your lung capacity, you'd want to be doing some burpees or going swimming or going for a run, which gets you over to this side. What I tend to work with my clients is they come to me when they're stressed or overwhelmed, and what I do is bring them towards the more positive side of the emotional spectrum, feeling optimistic, fulfilled, happy, proud of yourself. And what that involves is coaching them through developing a proactive self-care routine or self-care and daily rituals. And that's what we're here to talk about today, is how to build these healthy habits, right?
This is awesome, Colin. What would you tell somebody who uh, is kind of like wavering between where they feel calm and stressed, or maybe they're like stressed, a little bit of calm, and they go to overwhelm, and they fluctuate between, like, they feel like they bounce a lot between the green and the red here. So it's not so much like it's a steady state of worry and anxiety, but some days are good and some days are not good. Like, what would you tell someone who's experiencing that?
So if you're experiencing that, what you're like most people for a start, okay? And you've been trained to let life experiences dictate your emotions and your state of mind. And when we're kids, that's the only thing we can do. We're completely subject to our parents and our teachers and society's whims. So we just kind of, as a kid, our brain goes, oh, that's how the world works. Other things decide how I feel. And as adults, we grow up, and again, we know Pythagoras' theorem, and we know how to, I don't know, uh, like I said, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, which is the great joke that's always thrown around. But joking aside, is we're used to letting things outside of us dictate how we feel. We haven't built any sort of block or guard that says that we can let events happen and not let them affect us. And it takes time, but not as much time as you think, to build up your own inner resilience, that you don't bounce between these things and you exist bit by bit. You've moved the needle towards you're more self-reliant, self-fulfilled.
Awesome. And I think some of the questions we're going to roll into today probably tie right into the question I just asked you. And through that, I think I've been already very repetitive before we even got started.
It's all good, man. I'll stop sharing this, but if anyone wants to see this, we can post it in the group and I can talk more, and we'll just go back to us
Awesome.
talking.
Thank you. All right. So our first question, and P.S. for everyone watching, listening right now, if you're live with us, all of these interviews that I'm going to do are it's just like the podcast we had. They're listener viewer driven, and these are questions from people who asked for this. So if you have a question, comment that in the comments, and I can ask Colin for you. He can't see them, but I can, so I can definitely help out there. So Colin, our first question is: how do you build a habit, and how has COVID-19 impacted people's habits and their ability to hold and to keep those habits that they're building?
Okay, so most of our habits are actually shaped by our environment. So we know we generally eat because it's close to our workplace. We generally grab coffee at the same place, and we know what our work desk is, and that clicks us into work mode, and home clicks us into home mode. Um, so the environment provide a lot of cues and a lot of consistency and a lot of stability that our brain relies on. We sort of outsource that to the environment. We know when I go to the gym, it's workout time, and I don't have to think about my work or any other stresses. But very, very quickly, almost like the click of a fingers, and our home has just suddenly become our office, our creche, our school, our gym, our coffee shop, our restaurant, our bar. It's become everything to us. And there's no cues there that exist that say, hey, it's time for you to start work, it's time for you to stop work, it's time for you to work out, it's time for you to take care of your mind, it's time for you to read, it's time for you to watch Netflix. It's like I'm sitting on my couch, I'm meant to be on a work Zoom call, but you know, the Tiger King is playing on Netflix in the background and my kids are screaming at me and I haven't changed out of pajamas in 4 days. So that pretty much answers hopefully the question of how COVID-19 and all the dangers it possesses and all the measures we're trying to take as a society to crush it have had an impact, that we no longer have these external social cues that tell us how to act and how to behave. So that's why without this anchoring point of environment, we need to start making ourselves and our rituals the anchor point. What I mean is like looking inside yourself for the validation and the needs you have rather than looking outside yourself. Right? I'll give you a real silly, stupid example is I absolutely adore going to Starbucks next to the gym every day and having someone make me my latte. All right. I know it sounds silly, but it's Starbucks clothes and it's something I can absolutely do without. I can make coffee at home here. But the need I had was there was like a warmth and yeah, I deserve this coffee. Like coffee for me is a ritual. I know some people will argue that Starbucks isn't coffee, but going there and getting someone to hand me my coffee was a ritual. It was that warmth and need. What I need to do now as a person is like sit and try to generate that feeling myself. And it's something we've never been taught how to do. But it doesn't actually take that long for you to train yourself how to do it. So what we start with to create habits is we find routine in our daily life that existed before the coronavirus came along that we can start building good positive habits out of. And the habits I always generally tend to start clients with is, what habit do you normally do most mornings or most evenings? Most mornings, people generally have a cup of coffee at home or some sort of breakfast drink. And most evenings, people tend to brush their teeth. So we have these two things to anchor our days that probably don't change regardless of when we get up or what we're doing in that day. We can start building our daily routine around them. So I know when I do my morning coffee, that's when I'm going to take care of my mindset, my mental health, or whatever major habits need to happen out of the base of that. So for people watching who found it very difficult to get started for work, what they do is, okay, when I get my morning coffee, I should change into my work clothes and sit at my work desk. And that work desk can be as simple as I move my chair 90 degrees on the kitchen table and that's work. And then I move it back for meals or dinner and back for work. And then when I go sit on the couch, that's for my relaxation time. But I've built a habit starting with a habit that I'm already doing. So that's why I generally pick the morning cup of coffee for people to slow themselves down, set their intentions for the day, and then make the next habit out of that.
That's really eye-opening. I think that's something I would probably take a note on really quick if I didn't feel like I was on camera writing it. But so for making the habits, for making it more likely for us to take action on things, it's not so much like how can I make myself do it, but how can I prepare my environment so that I get the cue to do it. And we should look at like what we've been doing before all of this happened and do our best thing to recreate those rites or that ritual that precede what we want to do. I have an example that might actually fall into place here. I have a client and one of his employees, a lot of his company, they all work remote, and she does what I'm supposed to interview her next on is the morning commute. And so she works at home. And so what she'll do is she'll get up and she'll hop on an exercise bike in her home and go 30 minutes on the bike to work. And then she goes into her office and works. And when she's done for the day, she hops onto her bike again and she commutes home. And by the time when she's in there, it's like no more office, no more work, no more any of this because I'm no longer at work. And she's retained that she's plugged and created a way for her to actually have a commute to and from work to signify when she's starting and when she's done, even though she doesn't even have a physical place to go. Would that kind of fall into what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's a brilliant idea as well. That's the idea of shaping your environment. And I have some notes on good ways to shape your environment that I'll talk about first. But before we do that is you want to make your habits obvious, easy to do, and rewarding. And the two big mistakes people make with habits, the first one is they misunderstand how small habits compound, so they dismiss them. This is like okay, well, hey, if you can't do 100 burpees, it's well beyond your fitness, or you can't run a marathon, what's to stop you running to the end of the road and back? And people go, well, that's not really going to get me to lose the 100 pounds I need to lose. Or when I talk to people about mindset or mental health, I'm like, literally take 1 minute with your morning coffee. So when you get your coffee in your hand, get your phone, get 1 minute and just sit and do absolutely nothing. You can focus on your breath, or you can focus on your body, or you can just listen to your thoughts, but you don't have to do any of that. And at the end of the minute, you go, awesome, I've taken a minute for myself. And people dismiss it because it seems like, well, that's not much and it won't do much, but that compounds into a lot more clarity and a lot less anxiety. So small habits add up.
I feel
In the
like you
same
could
way
make a
that
hashtag morning minute there.
I'm telling you, man, I should have trademarked it before I started telling people about it, because everybody who follows it comes back and tells me how amazing it works for them.
Yeah, everyone who's watching this now, you're going to sign an NDA. You can't share hashtag morning minute unless Colm, you give them a nickel.
Yeah, you can do it, guys. I'm okay with that. But I'll tell you a very powerful story about a friend of mine. This is last year, and he doesn't mind. He's given me permission to tell the story. And he's very successful, owns a great landscaping business. He was like designing sets for HBO shows that were getting shot in Ireland. He's married, 3 wonderful kids. He told me, he goes, I have so much anxiety that it's all going to be taken away. And I'm anxious and I'm scared all the time and I'm worried all the time. I said, okay, well, you've got to start by taking the minute, because anything we do after this won't work unless you're giving yourself 1 minute to prove that you're valuable and for your own mental health. And he couldn't do it first thing in his morning because his wife would wake up the kids before him and he had to drop his daughter to school. I said, okay, well, what about in between school and work? He goes, oh, well, there's only 2 minutes from my daughter's school and my work office, or pulling into the yard. I said, well, there you go. You have 2 minutes. When you drop your daughter off at school, sit in the car for a minute before you get in the car. You can stare at your phone and watch the countdown. People will just think you're sending a text, so it doesn't look weird. And he goes, okay, I can do that. And I said, right. And if you really can, when you come home, when you pull into the driveway at home, again, take out your phone, look at it. You're probably taking out your phone anyway. So there was the physical cue of arriving back home in the car. Everybody takes out their phone when they finish a journey anyway, if they haven't been texting while driving. Don't text while drive, people. And he did this. And within a week, his anxiety had dropped considerably. And he said, I can't believe that worked. And thank you. I just feel better for it. So that's the power of the minute. Small habits add up. Having one less can of Coke a day or a week adds up. Taking 1 minute for your mental health adds up. That's the first mistake people make, is they tend to dismiss small changes and how they add up over time. The second one is the flip side, is people go, oh, well, I can do everything. I'm going to do my morning minute and I'm going to completely change my nutrition and I'm going to exercise 5 times a week and I'm going to meditate and I'm going to read instead of watching Netflix and I'm going to go to bed at 10:30 instead of like after late night talk shows. And I try to do all of this. Your willpower is finite. Like, you only have so much in a given day. And they do this for about a week and then the old habits slip back. Where if they started with the small habits and built them up, they'd make much better long-term progress.
Yeah, we both, I think, know this very well from being in the fitness space and in the health space. I mean, mental health, physical health. We are probably both familiar with Chip and Dan Heath and Lowenstein's gap theory, and we know that like lots of small wins work because you're always winning. If it's instead of saying run a mile, and you can't run a mile, well, if you can run from here to the apartment next door and then back again, and that's only like 100 feet, like if I only asked you to run 100 feet, you won. And so 101 feet, you win again. 102 feet, you keep winning over and over and over again. And you're gonna build up a whole lot of going back to your graph that you showed earlier of that um, not resilience, but your positive outlook and your self confidence. And it doesn't even matter if it's a small win. Win's a win or a win. And if you're looking, that's a small gap to fill. But if you have a big gap, like run a mile or change your entire life, or like this time next week, I want to be enlightened and I want to be very zen and I want to be able to move things with my mind. Like, you're probably not going to get any wins in the course of that week. And you're going to feel pretty let down on yourself. But if you have small wins set, like, well, I'm just going to take a minute to myself for the next however many days, and then I'm going to make it 2 minutes, or then I'm going to do some box breathing after I've mastered the minutes down. We know that people will like to build into like the actual physical fitness that they can achieve, but jumping to it doesn't work because, again, it's such a big jump. Most of the time you'll just fall straight through.
Yeah.
So I definitely like to start small with mental health as well. A lot of people here feel what, at least around in my social spheres, I have lots of friends who feel that everything's a little bit of ebb and flow, and you're probably going to be okay. But in the meantime, it's not a bad idea to talk about things and to go let off some steam and to go do some things for yourself. And I also have some people that I know who are like, you're either happy and healthy or you need to go see a therapist. And it doesn't have to be so black or white. That I like this approach that no matter where you are, you can start with something with the minute.
Well, absolutely. And the crazy thing is, I never advise people to take longer than a minute or two on their own, because what generally happens is, going back to talking about wins, is if you're not used to it and you start doing 5 minutes, you will invariably start thinking. Your brain can't stop thinking. Like, in much in the same way that you can't stop your heart beating, it's going to pump blood around your body regardless of what you do. It's just going to pump blood. Your brain is going to pump out thoughts in the exact same way. And why I say take a minute is, you get like most of the benefits of any sort of meditative practice within the first minute or two. It's the act of taking it. If you start going to 5 minutes, you'll start to think. And if you're a beginner, you'll think, oh, well, I failed because I couldn't shut my brain off. So that's why I'm like, small habits add up.
Yeah.
And those victories add up.
Just to tie right into our next question, I think if you're ready for it, you mentioned, just because you
Let's do
can't
it.
run, yeah, just because you can't run a mile doesn't mean that running 100 meters is worthless. And just that mindset of, well, because it's not a grandiose goal or a grand thing, doesn't mean that the little things are meaningless. Let's talk about growth mindset and versus fixed mindset, and also the abundance versus the scarce mindset.
Yeah, and you could lump those two, like growth and abundance versus fixed or scarce mindset. And it's, our brains are like really cool, complicated things, but they have like outdated programs in. And when our brains evolved, we were like in tribes of 30 to maybe 100 people. There's always that threat of the saber-toothed tiger. I tried to look up one day and see how many humans actually died from saber-toothed tiger, and I couldn't find it. But it's
Yeah.
always the threat that's used. And like, there was always a threat. And our brains are just very wired for that. Like, it made sense when we were living in the savannah or the jungles or wherever, that if you heard a snap of a twig, it was better to run in case it was a bear, rather than think, oh, maybe, some cool fruit has fallen. The person who ran survived. So our brains are stuck in this. Our brains don't need any help looking for a threat. But thanks to 24-hour news cycles now, they're getting a lot of help with that anyway. So our brains can naturally find threats. And when our brains find threats, everything in our psychology is designed to narrow our focus, look at the threat and think, okay, is this going to promote my survival, or do I have to get the heck out of Dodge? So our brains are really good at that. So we have to train our brain to look at what is good and what the opportunities are. And you mentioned Chip and Dan Heath, and this is where the idea of bright spots come into play. And the original story was, they were in Vietnam, actually, and they were looking at various villages where kids were malnourished. And they're trying to think, well, why are all these kids malnourished? And then someone had the bright idea of like, well, hang on, there's a few villages where the kids are thriving and they're doing okay. And they found out in those villages, the mothers didn't wash their bowls of rice. So the kids ended up eating a couple of insects and grubs every day, which gave them just enough protein to stay healthy. So then they went around from village to village and said, hey, you don't need to wash your rice. Let the kids eat and they'll be healthier. And they did, and they prevented a lot of malnourishment. The idea behind looking for our bright spots is it is exercise for the brain. When we ask people to come up with bright spots, they generally have to stop and go, oh, I can't think of them. And that's completely normal. But when you're working and looking for bright spots, you're training your brain to scan a wider horizon. Now, when you're looking for gratitude, there's two key elements that really make it work. The first is to add a why to it. So for example, I'm grateful for Zoom because we get to talk. And we wouldn't get to see each other without Zoom and the internet. So that's the why behind it. The second thing is, if you do your daily gratitude practice and focus on people or relationships, events or opportunities, and then small things, you'll get most of the benefits of gratitude, and you'll start to develop more of a growth or opportunistic mindset. So the people can be, I'm grateful for my sixth grade teacher because like she spoke quite a lot about life lessons and I still remember them 25, 30 years later. I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk to you guys today, and I'm looking forward to the time when Starbucks reopens so I can look forward to an event past or future. And then finally, the little things. So I'm grateful that I have a comfortable couch to sit on. And the little things are really important because right now we're probably missing a lot of little things in our life. You're probably missing your favorite street on your way to work, or that park you used to go to, that we kill for now, but right now we don't have. So that's why it's important to acknowledge the little things, because they build your sense of abundance.
Right on. I
so
think
that's the thing, is that like our brains are naturally wired to look for threats, which makes us think in scarcity survival mode. We can train them through gratitude, and the way to do that is always add a why, and then make it about people, events, and little things.
I teach a lot of our people who come in and are wanting to turn their fitness around, which is much more than just physical fitness. It's your physical health, your mental health, your social health, through coming to like a brick and mortar facility like the CrossFit gym that I used to run at the moment. And a lot of it comes back to nutrition as well. And the first few things I ask people to start doing is to track their food and to also practice bright spots. Like, what did you have go well for you this week? Just like me and you both know the psychology of why that works. The way I like to explain it to people, something you touched on, just I guess my way of wording it for some is, it's not that fit people are better at tracking their food, right? It's people who track their food generally become fit people, and they are fit people because they track their food. And with bright spots, and what I tell people looking for silver linings, if you want to be a successful and confident person in the things that matter to you, and whatever those things are, and to feel accomplished and to feel really at ease when you go to bed at night, that person usually is not very lazy when it comes to looking for the bright spots. They're not someone who looks for the negative in everything, and they're not somebody who doesn't actively install the practice of gratitude. Most people aren't. It's not that you are able to run. It's not that you run because you're fit. You're fit because you run, and you're not going to be a whole lot happy and more grateful because of the fact that you had those things happen. They were already happening. It's just that you installed the practice to train your brain so that you could become that version of yourself you're aiming for. And it's kind of, I like to teach people like it's more than change just your habits, but to hold that into context of we're in a sense changing identity into who we want to be. So we look at the person that I want to be, what would they do? Well, they probably are going to have a positive mindset and think that there's more than enough to go around for everybody, and focus on the things that are going good, even though they acknowledge and accept the things that are also going just a dumpster fire in their life too, because all of us have it.
Yeah. And I I don't want to make it that there's very real external things that you'll need to fix. You know, if you're broke, you'll need to look at how you're spending and can you earn more. Um, you know, if you are unhealthy, you'll need to look at like ways you can improve your physical health, you know, and if you're in poor relationships, you'll need to look at ways to change the dynamic or, you know, extract yourself from them. There's very real things to do. But at the same time, there's stuff inside of you that you can do. And one of the practices I teach when I get people used to their minute and their gratitude practice is the idea of loving kindness, which is like the goofiest name ever, but I didn't name it, so we got to stick with it. And it's basically looking out and wishing well for other people. And the reason why this works, it's like you said, it's like that reverse the way we do it. When all our needs are met, our natural instinct is to look around and see if the people close to us, if they need a hand. But we can use that to our advantage, to our brains, and that if I'm checking in on people, reaching out to friends and saying, hey man, how are you doing? Is everyone good? What do you need? If I'm doing that, my brain goes, oh, well, if I'm looking out for someone else, I must be okay. And it tops up its sense of security and sense of assurance, which is in the way that you said, like the fit person, you know, can't run because they're fit, you know, it's the opposite way around, because they go and run every day and, you know, weigh and measure their food.
Yeah, it's aspirational versus in practice, or like the points of view of looking at, like we can aspire to become it and it looks a certain way, and then when we're at a certain place we can kind of look in hindsight and see all the things we did, and actually it was the things in hindsight that we did and started practicing. You know, with that, I think moving to our next one, and then guys, we'll do one more question for Colm, and then we'll start taking yours. We've already got some in the comment section. So we talked about the mindful minute. I love that. I'm going to get off of here and have a mindful minute myself. And I might mute everybody on here, and I just might have it here on the call right now. And we also talked about like building abundant mindset and like checking on your neighbors when your plate's like not totally cleared off and good, but like just doing it proactively. So to keep on with that, what are some things people can do right now, especially under the conditions that we are in around the entire globe at this point, except for Sweden, because I'm sure you know we both work with PAIR, and what can we do under our conditions to build strong habits and to reinforce the mindset we've been talking about so far on this call?
Okay. Yeah, I got some points there. There's one thing that you mentioned there about the mindful minute. If there's people on this who are like, go, 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 have to be productive, have to squeeze out everything of the day. Google employees do this at the start of every meeting. They call it a G minute because everything in Google starts with G, which like everything from Apple starts with I, you know, there's iPhone, iPad, iMessage. Mm-hmm. And they do the G minute, and they do it because their meetings run 37% quicker. So that's why. When you take a minute to slow down, naturally the most important thing starts bubbling to the surface. You're like, oh, I need to call my mother, or oh, I got to send that email, which you could have forgot if you're always rushing from one task to the next. So that's the first thing I'm going to ask everyone to do. If you do nothing out of this call, experiment for at least a week, just to take a minute with your coffee every day and just see if your mental clarity improves. But the other point I wanted to get across to everyone is like, we're in a very strange time. Humans have a need for connection with other humans that isn't being met right now. We have a need for security, and like unemployment across the world is shooting up, which is going to have knock-on effects on everybody's business and everyone's livelihood. And we have a need for certainty, a degree of certainty in the future, and that's taken away as well. Is this thing going to last 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years? No one knows. And all these things are taken away. So give yourself grace to feel this, because your life has been taken away and the foundations have been shook and rocked and maybe completely removed. So it's okay if you're not perfect. It's okay if every day you don't crush it and kill everything on your to-do list and exercise and eat well and, you know, kiss your loved ones and always smile and, you know, read Dante's Inferno and do everything like the perfect human should do. Give yourself grace not to be perfect, because that's what you do to the person in your life you most care about, your best friend, your work colleague, your spouse, your kid. You give them grace not to be perfect. So give yourself that same gift. That's the first thing. Now, in terms of other things you can do is, if you're working from home, the two best things you can do are, one, wear work clothes. Right? And by the way, you don't have work pajamas. Let's put it out there. And you don't
Be
have to wear a
thankful
tree.
everyone can't see the bottom of the screen then.
When you stop wearing pants, that's your warning sign that you're slipping. Wear work clothes. Change into them at the start of the day and out of them at the end of the day. It will make a huge difference. When you're taking breaks, like send an email a break every hour that you'd normally walk to the coffee station or the water cooler, clean up a little bit of your apartment or your house. It doesn't have to be a full clean. You don't have to get out the Hoover and dust all the cobwebs away. But if you've a can of soda, put it away. If you've breakfast, just put it in the sink. If you have a few things to wash up, wash them up. Because as you do that, as you declutter the environment, your mind will declutter. And I'm only saying like 2 to 5 minutes of cleaning, but it will make a huge difference, because then when it comes to your relaxation time, you're in an environment you really like. And the final thing you can do is, if you can get outside into any sense of nature, do so. Basically, when our brains look at screens, our brains go, oh, we're looking at a very focused point. There must be a level of threat here because I'm so focused. But when our brains look at horizons, we look at possibilities and we feel a lot more secure. So that's why pictures of landscapes are so important and so soothing to humans. And even if you live in a city, just look down the street as long as you can. Pick as far away point as long as you can. And that helps reset your body's internal sense of calm. So they're my top quick fire tips that you can do right now.
Those are incredible. Thank you.
Welcome.
I especially like the horizon piece there as well. I tell everybody, like, don't think about climbing a mountain for success, because there's nothing to do at the top except go back down. But like, horizons lead to another horizon, and I did not know that about horizon paintings.
That's why. So all the paintings, like across all cultures that humans love, is there's like a vast expanse so we can see very far out. And generally at the top of the painting, there might be some trees or some branches or the top of a cave, so we know we've shelter. Generally, if there's a water source in the painting as well, it improves, like humans respond better to it.
Yeah. And if there's a dog, we sense loyalty.
Absolutely, absolutely. My little guy is sleeping on one of his teddy bears right now as he wants to.
Castro Panda Pooch.
Panda Pup, but close
Panda
enough.
Pup. Oh, I almost got his name right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, excellent. Let's get some questions answered. Colm, we got a few minutes left here. And before we do, I mean, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this with us. And guys, will have everything that we've talked about in some show notes for you a little bit later on, and in text as well for you too. And of course, Colm, you'll have access to all this stuff too. So starting off, questions from Jesse in the comments. I'm just going to read the whole thing because I think there's some context here that I'm not quite on, but I think it's more addressed to you and not me.
Okay.
So I was an athlete, obviously never a games athlete, but I aged out of the standard age group. Did that transition in your athletic life affect your disposition or cause frustration? Also, I think the COVID quarantine gives me worry about my progress and it actually turning into a loss of gains compounded by my aging.
Okay, so Jesse's worried about a loss of fitness, and then also just his age. He's not as competitive as much as he used to be.
Yeah, and Jesse is also a she.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
With the I. I know you can't pick that up on my accent from Arkansas, which is no accent.
Apologies. I should have said they. I should have went gender neutral. So there's a few things that it's very common actually. And one of my coaches is an Olympic hopeful. So he's going through this right now. That post the Olympics, a lot of Olympic athletes suffer from a depressive episodes afterwards because all their life was based around getting to the Olympics, becoming an Olympian, getting the tattoo or making Olympic gold, depending on your level. For some people, it's just getting to the Olympics. For some people, it's winning or medaling at the Olympics. And afterwards, there's a big drop off. And the reason behind this is your sense of meaning has been taken away. So we all need to feel like we have a sense of meaning in what we're doing, and we tie our values to various things. And we can tie our values to our athletic endeavors and our ability and our body fat percentage and, you know, how good our hair looks on a given day. And one of those things that's been taken away from me now is you see progress every day you go into the gym, and you know, I've ticked the box and I've made and I've earned progress. So you can feel very proud of that. And that has been taken away from you. So the first thing is to give yourself some grace. That is a loss. Like, I missed the barbell too. I missed the pull-up bar. And that's completely normal to feel that as well. Once you've allowed that loss to process, and that can take time, and you've got to give yourself that time. You can't speed that process up. You can definitely slow it down by fighting it, but you have to accept it as feelings you're feeling. There's nothing wrong with feeling feelings of loss or bad feelings. It's how we react and respond to them that dictates how they become. Then you can start looking at what else gives you meaning or purpose. Or once you've accepted the loss of that meaning, the loss of that drive, and the loss of that progress, then you open up to the next thing that comes along and gives you a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose, a sense of fulfillment. I can't say what that is without digging in deeper with what else is going on in your life, Jesse, but that's the short answer based off this. I will say, if anybody has any questions that they don't get answered on this, just feel free to message me. Jeff's tagged me like a bunch of times on Facebook, and I've allowed one of two of them onto my timeline.
Yeah, we'll get them answered.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of on a micro version of that too, it's kind of like getting, and all this is also understandable. And this is why I really like the fact that you've said, give yourself grace so many times on this talk, is we have, you know, if you go to a gym and if you do a complex lift that you're not used to, or you're new at, or it's heavier than you've ever done, like a snatch. Snatches are a movement most people miss a whole lot of the time. And when you push the threshold a little bit, whether something's brand new or if it's really heavy and you're going for the heaviest you've ever lifted, you might miss that 4 or 5 times in a row. And it's all important because it helps you be more prepared for the next time that you lift it. All this is good, constructive stuff to do, even though you miss it, but it's still not going to feel great because we did tie a lot of suspense and anxiety and concern into like that one moment. Whereas like, but if we can back out and zoom out, like, hey, lots of those moments are going to happen, and it's the cumulative effect of all those moments happening over and over again, or like this just leads us to the next place. And it's more of a what's the word here? Infinite game for everyone who reads Simon Sinek. Don't think about like, we're going to be the best. It's not being the best about anything, because that only lasts for a minute. But think about like, why am I really doing this? What makes this super important to me? How do I tie my identity into it? And what will make me keep coming back? And what do I leave here being fulfilled with? And so it's tough to leave fulfilled by missing a PR attempt on a weightlifting session, but it's really fulfilling when you hit it in a couple months and you can think back to all the misses that you had. And so it ties back in it, and as Alan Watts would say, it comes out in the wash.
Yeah. And it's tough because, again, we were never trained how to like just look at our emotional needs as actual needs. We've, for most of our lives, always relied on something external to give us a sense of validation, give us a sense of fulfillment, give us a sense of purpose. And we need that. We, just as much as we need to take care of our mental health, we need to drive towards a goal, because that's literally like part of being alive. You've got to pick something that is valuable to you and pursue it. And the pursuit is important. You've just got to alter in your mind that you've got to soothe yourself along the way.
Yeah.
It takes work.
It's, yeah, at the end of the day, it's all understandable too to just be frustrated. I'm frustrated plenty of times, and it's I've heard it put really well by Paulo Coelho, and he was I think this was like Manuscript in Accra, and it was it's silly to expect a soldier to not be nervous on the eve of battle that he's been training for his entire life. And it's to just understand that anxiety is part of it, suspense is part of it, does not mean that it is bad. So peace there. Guys, bring any other questions you have. As soon as the questions kind of stop rolling in, we'll call it right there, or me and Colin will just start putting our dogs on the screen, and then we'll get a whole lot more viewers.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Our ratings will go up. I want to kind of show everybody in my office right now because there's a sleeping dog in it, but I'm on a laptop. I don't want to like take the whole computer and turn it. Jessica Phillips McAllister has joined. Nick Holder joined. Guys, I called your names, and if I called your name, you have to ask a question. So there you go. And we'll give it another minute. Colin, is there anything else that you think, even if it's outside kind of our topic for today, we're on a platform we can communicate to a lot of people right now. What would you like, everybody to kind of know or be aware of? And you're in Ireland. Give me a little bit of, before we do that, give me a little bit of where you guys currently are within like the timeline of the pandemic. When did it hit? Is it picking up? Has it reached max or?
Okay, it has not peaked yet. Now, we're probably a week to 10 days behind Italy, which would put us about a week to 10 days ahead of the US, depending on where you are in the US. And it's kind of unusual, like, because we're an island, we get to, shore our borders a little bit quicker than a landlocked country or a state in the US as well. And then also, interestingly, just culturally, Ireland is sort of in between the collectivism of the East and then the individual attitude of the West. I'm not judging any of them as well. So by and large, we've had a soft lockdown some before St. Patrick's Day. And by the way, they closed the pubs in Ireland before St. Patrick's Day. That's how serious it was. And then they went into a much tougher lockdown. You're not meant to leave your house for further than 2 kilometers. Only leave to do grocery shoppings. Anybody over 70 isn't to leave their house under any circumstances because they're at risk, and that would include my parents. I'm sort of have an inside scoop because my brother works in the ICU as well, so he can tell me what it's like on the front lines. And what I'm noticing is so many people are struggling because of the 3 things that have been taken away: our sense of connection, our sense of meaning, and freedom. I suppose you could say 4 if you separate out meaning and freedom, and then the sense of security. So the first thing I say to everybody is, it's okay. You've got very real human needs that used to be met in whatever way, shape, or form aren't being met. The second thing is then, yeah, absolutely. If now is your time to start taking care of your mental health, I'm happy to help. And then the third thing is that think about the future. This is going to pass. It might be horrible while we get through it, but this is going to pass. And when you look back on this time, people are going to talk about this for years and years. When you look back on this time, make sure what you did, you're proud of be proud of it. And that could be, hey, all I had to do was just follow the guidelines and stay at home. Or I was in a position where I could do the shopping for my neighbors. Or I just checked in on my buddies and sent them funny memes all the time to keep their spirits up. But if you do that, you're going to be a lot better than worrying about what's going to happen. Your brain will do that naturally anyway. It doesn't need any help from you.
I just wrote that this morning in my blog post about, it hasn't gone out yet, but it's
okay.
Look back and what are you going to be proud of? Great minds think alike, and now I got to change my blog post.
I put a video out of that like a week and a half ago, Jeff. So
come on. I was thinking about it a month ago.
Okay, you can. Well,
with the time shift delay, I mean, we'll just have to have an email with each other so we don't step on our own toes. And closing the pubs in Ireland, I was thinking like maybe that's just as dangerous as the Rona. I'm not sure. It's dangerous here in Little Rock. We missed the parade, so we're pretty bummed about it.
Yeah, it has an effect.
Yeah. Sweet guys. I think we'll be good to almost call it here. Colm, before we go, people are going to be interested in you. People are going to want to reach out to you and talk to you. I'm already getting text messages. Where can people find you? And tell us a little bit kind of about the mentalhealthplan.com. And then I think we'll wrap it up today.
Okay, so it's at the Mental Health Plan on Instagram, the Mental Health Plan on Facebook, the mentalhealthplan.com. I try and post everything on all the platforms so I meet anybody. Um, Generally, what I work with people is when they're starting to develop their own self-care routine, I coach them through weekly calls or bi-weekly calls, depending on how frequently they need it, and provide follow-up accountability until they build and embed the routine. And then what we do is we do a mental health scorecard throughout that as well. So you can actually codify and see how your mental health is improving as time goes by. But irrespective of whether you want to work with me or not, or whether you want to hop on a call with me or not, I give everyone a 20-minute call, and you can book that through the site. It's linked on our Facebook and in our Instagram as well. I try and put out a video or a piece of content every day. I always try and keep them to a minute because I'm all about that mindful minute, and also that's the Instagram limit. So what it does is short, sharp little inputs that, again, move the needle towards just thinking about yourself, accepting yourself better, developing greater awareness, and just greater friendliness towards the experience of being alive.
It's wonderful. Awesome. Well, Colm, thank you so much, man. And I really appreciate you coming on here and helping us and uh, sharing this knowledge from like completely across the world, and helping people kind of keep the chaos and the crazy canned a little bit better, or maybe not so much canned, but just dealt with in a healthy way, and helping us all stay a little bit more sane through this temporary situation. And it's extraordinary times, but thankfully we got extraordinary people like yourself coming on and helping everybody. So I appreciate you coming on here, and then also just from me to you, buddy. Thank you for doing what you do, and thank you for
My
making
pleasure.
time for others.
My pleasure.
Awesome, sweet. Well, guys, we will log it off right here, and I will put our actual text version of today's call in the notes, in the call notes. You guys will have that, and Colm, I think we're going to get a graph from you that we talked about earlier. We'll put that up as well. And of
Yeah,
course, if you guys have any questions, Colm, I'm just going to add you into our group for as long as you prefer to be in there, and you guys can tag him or ask him or just reach out to him as well, and go check out the mentalhealthplan.com if you guys feel that really spoke to you. And Colm, stay safe, and thank you again so much, buddy.
no worries. You're more than welcome. Thank you.
Goodbye.